Half laps without a ruler. Let's see how accurate I can do it with only a few basic tools and the dado stack on my table saw. It's time to have some fun in the workshop. What can be more fun than showing you guys how I cut close on to 70 half laps. How's it? My name is Dylan, this is Ply Creations, and as always, a very warm welcome to my workshop. Today I'm building a trellis for our garden. It also happens to be internal customer project number 3. If you don't know what that is, I'm leaving the link in the description as well as on the screen. Go and check out the series. But today's focus is half laps and possibly my favorite way of cutting them. So let's start with the old school way of doing things. Starting with a marking gauge, marking knife, made this myself, quite proud of it, as well as a square. I've got waste sections left from processing the stock, and I'll use these to do the layout and do the test cut. I'd like to mark half the thickness of the stock. The stock is 20 by 20 millimeters square, let's say roughly about 3/4 of an inch. I've already set my marking gauge to give me the middle of the stock that I'll be working on. If you'd like to have a step-by-step or would like to see a step-by-step guide of how I go about the process of setting up a marking gauge like this to give me the middle of my stock, I'm leaving a link in the description as well as on the screen for you to go and have a look at. But we're marking the middle of the workpiece. So that's going to be the middle of the workpiece. Just in case you can't see it, mark it with a pencil. Now we go over to one of the opposing sides to mark out the thickness or the width of the joinery. To do that, I've got another piece of lumber that I'm going to be using. First of all, I register my square where I'm going to be making the joinery. Cut with the marking knife, or strike a line with the marking knife. Bring my workpiece over. Make a mark. Hope you can see that. Make a mark. Take that away. Register my knife in the mark. Slide my square across to the mark and then strike a line. Try not to go full depth when striking a line. And as you go along, you can make that deeper. I now need to bring this over. Of course, your workpiece should sit between the two lines, which it does. Now I need to bring it over to the depth mark. I register the marking knife in the nick on the corner, slide up the square, strike the line down. Do the same for this edge. Sorry, it's a little bit fiddly. Strike that line. So that is the width of the cut. That is going to be the height of the cut. And we are removing that section of stock, and we'll do so in both these workpieces to see if the joint fits. I'll be taking you over to the table saw where I'll go through the process of how I set up the dado stack. Time to set up for the width of the cut, and for that I'll use one of my offcuts. I did mention that the dimension is 20 millimeters, and I'm going to show you my favorite way of doing it using my dado set. Important to note that everything that we do from now onwards is creeping up on the final dimensions of the joinery. It's a little hard to put wood back after you've gone too far, so we are creeping up little by little to get the perfect friction fit on the half lap joint. Now what I do is, on the dado stack that I have, got it from the US, there's a list of dimensions on the outside of the box, and it makes suggestions in regard to the dimensions of the blades that you need to use and how many you need to use in the stack to get to a specific dimension. Of course, the dado stack coming from the US, all those measurements are in imperial. Now what I tend to do is I find the closest one to the nominal size of my stock, 20 millimeters, and in imperial measurements that is, just checking my notes again, is 25, 30 seconds of an inch, and that is about 0.2 millimeters shy of a full 20 millimeters. I then place my dado stack in the configuration as suggested on the box on a flat surface. My table saw top is perfect for that. I bring up the stock to the blade stack and then feel for a gap, and I can feel a slight gap there, but I want to get it closer without going past 20 millimeters. And for that I use a shim. These shims are really nice. They're magnetic, and if you are using dado stacks and you struggle to keep your shims in place, this is a really good solution. It was sent to me with the dado stack. So I will place the shim in position and then add the outer blade. Bring my stock up and again feel, and I can feel a very slight gap. It's much smaller than it was the first time around, and I'm roughly where I want to be. I'm focusing on the width of the joint first. So what I'll do now is install the dado stack. Remember to install your zero clearance insert to provide you more support. And then I'll set up for my first test cut to check the width. After that, we'll start working on the depth of the cut. So first width, then depth. Quickly set up and I'll show you the test cuts and our results. And that is why we take test cuts. Finally got to a width that I'm happy with, and you can see nice friction fit. It doesn't come loose too easily. Of course, it took 7 cuts to get there, and the 25-30 seconds was too wide. I had to drop it back down to 1/4 of an inch, then added a spacer, and that gave me a decent width, and that width in the cut or the dado stack is nominal. I took it over to the stock that I'm going to be using to make the trellis, and some fit quite nicely and others are a little bit on the loose side. No surprise really, the stock was cheap. Can't imagine that it would be perfectly dimensioned. Next is we'll set up for the height. I'll take you through the process, then cut into both my waist pieces and see where we end up. I'm placing my workpiece next to the blade and I'm checking where the blade's apex is in relation to the top of the joint, and I'll show you what we're looking at, and that is the line demarcating the depth of the joint, and I'm not there yet. So I'll be raising the blade, doesn't need much, and then checking again, and at the top of the apex I'm just kissing the line, so rather safe than sorry. I don't want to cut the joint too deep, so I'll check that. I'll make test cuts in both my waist pieces, bring them together, make sure they sit flush. Just a safety tip again, whenever you are working on your table saw, working on the blades, taking them in and out, or adjusting the blades now, and you're touching the blades and you have your fingers involved, do be sure that it's unplugged. A couple of tweaks and our depth setting is complete. Also more test cuts than I would have liked. I almost ran out of test pieces, but it's all set and I'm leaving the table saw alone until I'm done with the project. Going to assemble it quickly and show you what the joint looks like. Tap it home. It's flush on the top and on the bottom. Give it a shake and it's not coming apart, and that's what we'd like. Tell you a little bit more about the project I'm building. I did mention it's a trellis for our garden. Give you the dimensions quickly. The total width is 1.2 meters. Its height is 1.8 meters. I'm using a species called Maranti. Vertical slats, I have 5 across the trellis, and horizontal slats I'm going to have 7, and in total that will give me the 70 half lap joints that I need to cut. The way I'm going to get around having to cut, or not having to cut each one of them individually, is I'm going to gang up all the vertical slats, cut the joinery across all of those, and then do the same with the horizontal slats. And that marks the end of internal customer project number 3. Well, not exactly. I still need a spot of glue and a lick of finish, but it should suffice. Quite frankly, not my best work yet, and I completely blame the quality of the raw materials that I've been working with, but it will work. For those of you hanging on or waiting to find out how many cuts it eventually took to get all the half laps cut, at 24. I wanted to do it in 12, but ganging up all the verticals and all the horizontals together just made the stock unwieldy and difficult to use on the table saw, and as a result dangerous. So I've split them in 2 sections of each and ended up doing 24 cuts in total. That brings us to the end of another edition of Ply Creations. As always, thank you for joining me in my workshop. Be safe in your own workshop, and until I see you again next time, have a good one. Cheers.